If he needs to, he can bail out and secure the draw. So, okay, a king's pawn opening. This is what we saw in game 1 of today. And there, Wesley So brought out his knight, then brought out his bishop for the Spanish opening. He does it again. It's a repetition, the same beginning to this game as we saw earlier on. No differences until this last move. White's rook coming across to the centre rather than pushing a pawn. Small difference, but actually quite a big difference in terms of the mode of the game. And Jovanka, you mentioned it earlier today. This is the opening that Liem loves to play.
Okay, we're going to... for a second, I thought we were going to see a repetition there. But no, they were playing with us.
Yeah, so Wesley So, actually, he went for this opening. He had the choice. He had the chance to repeat the game with a quick draw. He repeated once, but he didn't repeat again. So he's playing for the win, Wesley So. We've got confirmation, at least, with that little manoeuvre. And, OK, the game goes back to more normal waters. This is well-known stuff. So far, the Black Knight trying to harass that White Bishop. Look at White's bishops on the bottom of the board there, playing the game from afar, and now White's rook lifts up. This is a very well-known position. It's happened in many World Championship matches. It came to fame, this position, in the Kasparov against Karpov World Championship matches. So, right now, who has done their homework better? Look how much time they've gained. We're on move 21. They haven't flinched. They haven't blinked. Wesley up at 18 minutes, gained 3 minutes from what he started with. And it's so tense. There's only been one trade of pawns. Look at the knights in the centre of the board as well. White has a great knight. White has an extra central pawn, actually. But Black's 2 knights there controls so many squares, already threatening to jump into White's position.
And I have to say something, David. The players have been here before, absolutely both of them, because, in fact, this is a direct repetition of their encounter in the new In Chess Classic preliminaries.
Okay.
So that game actually ended in a draw very shortly after.
OK, so a few months ago in the new In Chess Classic, we saw these players fight it out in this position, and they've had a few months to work out this position, to analyse it, to maybe come up with some improvements. Is it surprising to you, Jovanka, that Wesley So... I mean, he could have predicted this position, right? They've had it before against each other. He's now thinking for 1 minute.
That's a little bit surprising. But maybe it's kind of like part of the psychological game here, you know, to keep your opponent on the toe, pretend maybe you have something deep prepared, or... Yeah, I mean, I don't have any other explanation for why Wesley is considering what to do. I can tell you what happened in the earlier game a few months ago. Well, that proceeded with Wesley capturing a pawn, playing the A pawn, taking the pawn on B5, and after the trades, then challenging. OK, so he's kind of doing... And then, you know, he's kind of maybe doing something a little bit similar, but a different move order. So he's actually challenging that pawn that's standing on C4.
OK, so that black pawn chain on the left side, it's very strong, it's fortified, and Wesley wants to break down those pawns if he can. And so just trying to destabilise now those black pawns. Liem has options. He has a few nice choices here. Maybe he can trade a couple of pawns, or he can jump into White's position with his knights. I would expect actually one of the knights to jump forward now, because if those black pawns on that left side, if they all disappear, suddenly Black's knights have no more strongholds. And that's why this is the moment Liem decides to jump in with his black knight. There's some threats as well. The white rook at the bottom of the board is attacked, so White trades off one of those knights. That knight's only going to get replaced by its fellow, surely. Is Liem going to consider taking back that bishop with a pawn? I would not hesitate. I would take with the black knight, try and get that knight active.
Yeah, that's the move that's been played 3 times before. Capture that bishop with the knight.
OK, and Liem, actually, I just noticed there on the camera, he looked up. That means he's trying to recall something. He's seen this position before, or he's studied it, and he's just trying to think, OK, what did I study? What did the computer say was best? And what's the follow-up? A few questions here, but either way, Black has a choice, 2 choices now to recapture that white light square bishop with a pawn or knight. And maybe he's slightly tempted to take with a pawn, because the black knight might have other jobs it wants to do. Maybe it wants to take some of the white pawns in the centre later on. So pros and cons to both moves, for sure. OK, he does take with a knight. That's the most natural. Yeah. Why not install a phenomenal knight, a super powerful knight in the heart of White's position? Black's knight anchored by a pawn.
And interestingly enough, Black has played in this position 3 times in previous games. Sorry, like the queen will move to the G6 square.
Okay, so maybe we should show some of the plans that both sides can enact in this position. And you mentioned, Ivanka, this is the most common move.
Yep.
Bringing the black queen across, bringing it across, eyeing up this pawn. Now it's a double attack against this pawn. It's only defended once by white's rook. And how would white react to that? White, actually, I don't see many ways to react to this, because you're also tied down. The queen can't come and defend the pawn because the queen's tied down to a bishop, the black knight attacking that bishop. So maybe you have to attack the white queen. Maybe you have to bring your knight across to attack it, right? Mm-hmm. What else can white even try? Maybe you can flick in a pawn takes pawn move as well in the meantime.
That's the most popular choice.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, plenty of ways to think about defending that weak pawn there in the middle of the board.
Yeah, so this is the weakness. And actually, if black doesn't play this, we should also mention some of the options, some of the plans. Black has this phenomenal knight, this extremely strong beast here, but the problem is, if you ever get tempted to trade it off, or if you're ever forced to trade it off, then suddenly we reach a scenario where black has two bishops. Normally we love the two bishops, but they're both locked in. This bishop especially is just staring at a wall of pawns, and it's actually a bad piece. So black cannot get tempted to go and capture that white bishop now. I think he has to try and keep his knight as long as possible.
Yeah, well, actually, the drama continues, because I just looked at my database properly now, and I can see that the top player who's actually played this position has been white, Wesley So, black, Liem Le. And in that game, actually, after the trade of pawns, then what happened was that the white knight came and attacked the queen. So,
okay, so in the other variation we showed earlier, with the black queen sliding across one square.
Exactly. So, I mean, I'm thinking that Liem is thinking, you know, if I just move my queen to that square, what happens after pawn takes pawn? It's a bit baffling why both sides are hesitating so much, because the game actually ended in a repetition of moves as the queen and the knight just kept their dance going.
It's mind games. It's mind games, Ivanka. Both sides, they know they've had this before. They know they've both studied it. Liem here, he probably remembers that he brought the black queen across one square, but he's trying to look for something different, something else. Because for him, he would love to play for a win. He's 1 point down in the match. And also, he knows that earlier on in the game, already, white has turned down the chance to make a draw. So if black moves his queen across, if we see a repetition of that previous game that they've had against each other, that ended in a draw, Wesley must have something else up his sleeve to keep the game going. And that's psychologically unpleasant if you know that the move you want to play will run into a new idea that your opponent studied deeply with a computer. So who's going to spring the first surprise? I think that's the key right now. 24 moves deep, and they're already in known territory still.
Yes.
So,
yeah, and whilst we're waiting for Liem to take a decision, well, once again, I have to share with you everyone's answers to our quiz of the day, because we're asking what's the prettiest place you watched a Champions Chess Tour game from. And Floey says that they watched the Gold Money Asian Rapid on the beach. Oh. That is just paradise there. And Erica de Guzman says that my husband and I are always watching Champions Chess Tour at our home office. It keeps us up during overtime, and then we continue watching right before bed. It's a time difference from the Philippines. It's a good idea to watch from the home office. I like that one.
Yeah, and also, cool office. Pretty cool office.
I know. And Rainy Santos says the prettiest place I watched the Champions Chess Tour was from my phone on the pier in beautiful Manhattan Beach, California. Nice. Okay, but get this, guys, because we have a new move on the board. Okay, so Liem actually chose not to make that queen move and instead pushed his pawn forward.
Okay, so big committal decision from Liem. So he's attacking the white rook with that pawn push. White's rook has to retreat. It has to move. But now the problem is black's pawns, they're not all connected. So the black pawns, when they were connected, they were actually helping the black knight to survive, staying on this strong outpost. But now that the black pawns have stepped forward, the black knight is going to have to make a commitment. It's going to make a decision whether to maybe trade itself off for white's bishop later on, or whether to step back, because either way, you definitely can't keep the black knight on this square. So Wesley, right now, just debating which kind of square to use for the rook retreat. And when that happens, I expect to see Liem make a decision with the black knight. So, OK, interesting. I like the attitude behind that. I like the mentality behind that last move by Liem. He has got the first surprise in. I mentioned that was a nice blow to Wesley, but also he's showing that he's playing for the win. That last move, even if he repeated what he did previously, that would have ended in a maximum draw for black. So, yeah, this one is going to heat up nicely. The reason as well it is a surprise to Wesley So is because probably it isn't the top computer move. When we saw that move played by black, the evaluation bar shifted slightly. But the key to openings, the best opening players in the world these days, they don't necessarily look for the top computer suggestion because that's what everyone studied, that's what everyone knows. So they'll look for the second move, maybe the third or fourth move even, that the computer suggests, which is still a good move, but at least poses your opponent new problems. And, OK, this game is going to get wild soon.
Yay. Yeah. And, well, Wesley has a choice now. Where should he put the rook? I mean, it has to move. I mean, would you move it to the second row or just move it back to where it came from? It's been analysed. This position has actually been analysed. And in that particular analysis, he moved it back to the original square. OK, so he's retreated it all the way back to where it came from, and now Liem steps backwards with his knight. OK, interesting. That's not what I expected, to be honest. I thought that black knight might even just capture the white bishop or would retreat in the other direction. This knight stepping back, maybe there's some threats. Maybe black wants to just eliminate the white knights, and then the black queen has some ideas against the white rook in the corner. The black knight also defending its pawns over there on the left for now. So, OK, really creative from Liem. Maybe this is the type of idea he would have just stumbled across, not in this exact position, but in his studies in this type of opening, and he's just utilising it here. Yeah. And suddenly Wesley has some problems to solve, because do you just leave that knight, that black knight, where it is? Do you trade that black knight off? Do you take it off with your own knight? If you don't take it off, what do you actually do? I don't see another productive move. Yeah, I'm also thinking about how to resolve the situation with those black pawns there on the left side of the board. Because, you know, first of all, I'm worried, seriously worried, that black might get a connected pass pawn, the best type of pawn there is out there, you know, just by pushing one pawn forward. So, and I'm just thinking, well, what happens if white plays pawn takes pawn? And once...
Yeah, this is the threat you wanted to show Jovanka.
Yeah, that's the positional threat.
Yeah.
Exactly, and that terrifies me because just take a look at that pawn. I mean, gosh, goodness me, it's going to be a long day before those pawns get destabilised or anything bad happens to them. So don't want that hanging over me. And so I'm thinking pawn takes pawn. Okay. So and then the problem is like knight takes pawn. And then I will have to take time out to, well, I might not have to, but, you know, the most tempting move is actually to take time out, do something with the rook, and then, lo and behold, black pushes the A-pawn forward one square, and then suddenly there's a protected pass pawn. And so I'm thinking, OK, that may be OK, may not be OK. And so I'm thinking, OK, what else can I do? And then you mentioned another capture, so if we go back to the original position, and I'm thinking, OK, knight takes knight. But if he plays knight takes knight, it'll be pawn takes knight, the answer, and attacking my knight. And then I have to take time out to do something about my knight. And then the worst case scenario, the thing that I was terrified about, is actually on the board and is going to play c3.
Yep.
And, yeah, I don't like this.
Yeah. This pawn, if black can establish a pawn like this, it's going to be a thorn in white side for the next 50 moves. And eventually, any endgame is just going to be winning for black because of this pawn. It's just going to make a new queen. So that's what Wesley So has to weigh up right now. He has to weigh up, can you allow, in this position, can you allow the black pawn to move forward, or do you have to eliminate it? The problem is, if you eliminate it, as Jovanka mentioned, the black knight gets active, and then the black has other pawns to push later on, and that's what it's all about right now for Wesley, eliminating these two guys, and it's not easy to do.
Okay.
He does trade the knights. Okay. Knight takes, we will see pawn takes knight, and then it's down to this position. After the white knight springs forward, does black have time to push this pawn? Or will white go for something similar to the first game today? Will white maybe swing his rook across to one of these two squares? For example, trying to land this knight takes pawn move, which actually won him the game in game one today. Suddenly, a big attack for white may be brewing, but it's urgent for white. If the attack doesn't work, black will win an endgame because of this pawn. So that's how high the stakes are. It's either very good for white or very, very bad.
Wow.
And it is Liem thinking now, so would you say to him now, take a break, look at this, analyze it, this is critical?
Yep. He's doing the right thing. He's got enough time. They've already played 26 moves and still got just under 12 minutes. So,
OK.
The problem is maybe there aren't too many other tempting choices for black in this position. So if you recapture that white knight with the black rook or with the black queen, suddenly your own pawn drops off. You're not threatening anything, so white has the time, luxury, to go and take one of your black pawns on that left side, on the black pawn on the c4 square. So you have to recapture with the pawn, right?
Yeah.
Maybe he's just thinking on the next moves, but it would be practical to just play this one because it's forced anyway, or it's the most logical at least.
And the line that you showed actually looked quite scary for white. I mean, it just looked like the white was generating a lot of play and wasn't entirely comfortable. So it might be the case. OK, so pawn takes, pawn takes is on the board, and Wesley must step forward with his knight. Yeah. I don't see anything else.
If you go back with the white knight, then that knight's just going to be passive, and you have no compensation for black establishing that strong protected pass pawn.
You don't want to go for that one, I'm afraid. You've got to go forward. The knights belong on the dream square, the f5 square. And we've said it many, many times, that square is a big fan favourite of, like, Garry Kasparov, world champion.
Yeah, and I remember reading some Bobby Fischer quotes as well about that knight on the f5 square, so that white knight has to just move.
Yep.
Both sides, I think maybe they're starting to feel the nerves because we're getting closer towards that fourth game, getting closer towards deciding how today finishes. Because black's last move was forced, Liem did spend a minute on it. Now white's next move, it's logical, it's pretty much obligatory. But now Wesley's spending a minute on it. So both players maybe slowing down in their decision-making just while the action heats up, while the stakes are so high. And, yeah, I don't see any other move, Ivanka.
No.
Maybe Wesley's considering
OK, it's on the board.
OK, maybe he was considering shifting across the white rook to attack the black queen, but he does eventually stumble across this knight jump.
OK. So the big issue is, can black get away with pushing that pawn and creating the protected pass pawn? The line that you showed, moving the rook across, looked scary. Can black survive that? Because if black can't survive that, then, whoa, you do not touch that pawn at all. You've got no time.
What are the other options for black right now, though?
Maybe you can kick away the knight. That's not another option, right?
Yep, you can hit the white knight.
Hit the white knight.
With a pawn or with a bishop, maybe.
Yeah.
OK, he does go for the most ambitious move, Liem.
Cool.
OK, but, you know, the bar has shot up.
OK.
Oh, wow.
OK, it's the most ambitious, but it's a huge amount of risk attached to it.
Yeah, I mean, the line that you say, so you showed us this rook move. OK, wow, OK. Wesley's played it. OK, so now the big threat in the position is knight takes pawn check. And it'll be a discover check. OK, the queen retreats backwards, but there's a lot of pieces.
Ivanka, guess what the winning move is now?
Knight takes pawn.
Yeah, so the winning move now is exactly the same winning move that we saw from Wesley in game one. So in game one, he won by sacrificing his knight for a pawn on the h6 square. Again, that is the winning move.
We've got to show it, David, on the board.
Let's keep an eye on the players' faces, though, because we might see a huge reaction from Liem if this move happens. The winning move for white is knight takes pawn, again, for the second time today, shattering the black king structure, and after the pawn recaptures, the white rook just slides across. Yeah, and no matter where the black king goes, the white queen is going to jump out and threaten some checkmating patterns. And there's actually no way for black to defend this. It's just like the last scenario. It's just like game one today. Black's king, look at it. It has no defenders around it. It's just defenseless. Black's queen is far away. Black's bishops aren't able to defend. Yeah, it's just unstoppable. This checkmating idea now for white actually landing on this square. If you move your bishop out the way to protect this square, suddenly there's checkmate on a different square and the black king is doomed. So this is the move we're looking for from Wesley So. If he plays it, game over.
It will be almost instant resignation, and I absolutely think that the knight on f5 basically means, you know, it's just dying to sacrifice itself to open up lines. And I mean, I just think that Wesley is going to see that. And once again, Liem has been careless with the safety of his king.
Yeah, I think Liem's realised he suddenly shifted. Normally he's just ice cold, he barely moves, but suddenly he shifted back in his chair and Yeah, if he spotted this knight check, he knows that he's about to lose.
Yeah, and it's on the board. There was never going to be any doubt. Wesley, of course, he's one of the finest players in the world. He's going to spot a tactic like that. Pawn takes, the rook slides across, just as David indicates. And unfortunately, I mean, is there any hope in blocking that check with the bishop?
If black throws his bishop in the way, then white's bishop actually at the bottom of the board can go up and capture that black pawn on h6 again, and that black bishop is just—it's just a stopgap. It's going to get lost any moment. So Liem, what's he going to do? Is he going to resign? And Wesley found it the first time. He found it in game 1, but he found it again, and that's why the top players are so good. They do go back to basics quite often, and they think checks, captures and threats. And White's winning move, the killer move on both occasions, was a capture and it was a check. That's why we look for them on every occasion. If they work, they can be this powerful. They can just destroy the opponent's king position. And yeah, Liem, he's lost in the same way twice now today. That's going to be painful. The king does go to the side, and now White's queen's going to jump forward.
Yep, and no way. I mean, is there any way to defend against checkmate? I don't see it.
You can throw the
queen in the way, but you know.
The black queen, if it comes out, it's just going to get captured by White's bishop. So it's all going to happen now. This checkmate next move on the G line. You have to. There's literally no other way other than to put your queen in and just give up the black queen for a bishop now. Liem, he'll either resign or give up his queen, and either way.
I think he will just resign. It will be game over. What a painful day for Liem. I mean, 2 careless moments, and he's just thrown away the match.
Yeah, exactly. And in the same way both times. That's the real tough thing to handle. But Wesley, meanwhile, just waiting for that resignation, and it comes. Liem just gives up.
Wow, after only 3 games in the first final match, it's over. Wesley So winning both of his games with the white pieces. Liem just disappearing. He must be very disappointed with his performance today.
Yes. I mean, this really wasn't what he wanted, and it's also not reflective of his entire play throughout the whole